This is the Vic Feazell Show podcast, hosted by Vic Feazell and Jonathan Zimick. Sponsored by Moroso Wood-Fired Pizza, Pinewood Coffee Bar, and the law offices of Vic Feazell.
So where we left off in our last episode was, Vic, you were going through the transcript of the interview that Jim Boutwell did with Lucas to get our final confession that we read through in the first episode. So Vic, continue on, man.
Lucas reiterates, yeah, that's the same girl, no doubt about it. Boutwell, well, if there's no doubt about it, then you're off on your time of the year. Twice more, Lucas says it's the same girl. So if there's no doubt about it, then you're off on the time of the year. And then they get back to where they ate, and Lucas says it was at a truck stop just outside the last town before you enter Texas, coming from Oklahoma.
Right.
Which fits with the matchbooks.
And here's a quick clip of Jim Boutwell talking in an interview after the Orange Sox case was done and over with. And he talks about the matchbooks and how it's one of those things that only the killer would know.
The things that he says are usually you're frequently able to confirm them in some method or another, just like the case of this girl with the orange socks. He had said he picked her up on Interstate 40. Well, we found a match folder from a Holiday Inn on Interstate 40 there at the scene. As I say, that had no significance whatsoever at the time we found it. We just picked it up and kept it.
And Lucas talks about him stopping to get something to eat because there was food in her stomach that she had eaten like a couple hours before.
Right. Yeah, the medical examiner thought it was chicken.
Yeah.
Thought it was some kind of like chicken sandwich or something.
And this is something Boutwell would have known because he had the medical examiner's report with him. That's what Henry saw, that he got the approximate age, the height, hair color, all that stuff from. Laying right there on the desk. And then Boutwell asked, how'd you get her out of the car to dump her? Lucas, it seems like I drug her by her feet down over an embankment. Now, a while ago, you remember, he had drug her out into a grassy field out, a few miles off of the highway. Mm-hmm. So now we're back over here. All right, right here on the audio of Boutwell talking to Lucas, he shows him several pictures.
Correct.
Yes. So he actually saw pictures during the very first interview. And that's what our whole grand jury was about, was that you guys shouldn't have been showing him the pictures and letting him confess. And by that time they had circled the wagons. I guess they had forgotten about this because Boutwell denied that he ever showed Henry any pictures. He denied that under oath.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Well, here it is.
He says he thinks he may have bitten her on her shoulder or on her breast, but that didn't pan out.
Never any bite marks found.
No. Then Boutwell comes back again. Do you think she was having her period? Lucas, I definitely think she was the same girl that was having her period. Now, I could be wrong.
Here, check out this clip we have of Jim Boutwell in an interview talking about that very thing. Listen to what he has to say here.
We had known from the medical examiner's report that the girl was having her menstrual period. We had found at the scene a homemade sanitary napkin, along with a couple of match folders, which had no significance whatsoever at the time. I asked Lucas if there was anything wrong with that girl. Now, this could have meant, was she crippled or numerous things. And he thought a little bit, and he said, yes, she was wearing a Kotex. She was having her period. He hadn't been told that.
Now, you remember the way they convicted Henry of this was, the evidence was his confession, and then there's got to be corroboration. The corroboration was the homemade sanitary napkin and the matchbooks.
Right.
I picked her up in Oklahoma. I think she was on her period. That was the corroboration. That's how they convicted Henry. Mm-hmm. That's what Ed Walsh had the gall to stand up and say was a solid case.
The main piece of evidence that we had was Lucas's confession that he had given Sheriff Boutwell. And we had reason to believe before trial that Lucas would recant that statement. So we had to prepare our case and present as much corroborating evidence as we could. At the scene, Sheriff Boutwell recovered a matchbook from Interstate 40 in Oklahoma. Also recovered was a bloody homemade sanitary napkin. These pieces of evidence supported the statements that Lucas made as to how he killed this girl. But besides Lucas's confession, those were really the only pieces of evidence we had.
Wow.
When all of this, that's not corroborating evidence when you've shown it to him.
Right.
And all he does is acknowledge what he's seen in a photograph. You know?
Yeah, it's not going to get you there.
Not going to get you there. Come on, Ed. You know better than that. And then Lucas says, I didn't see no rag or anything like that. Well, I think later he describes it more like some kind of homemade, doesn't he?
Yeah, like homemade
Yeah.
deal. But really, it was just like they found it was just a handkerchief on the side of the road.
Yeah.
It's interesting, just as an aside to that, what you just talked about, the actual charges they pinned on Lucas. You know, they hit him with aggravated rape, kidnapping, robbery, and murder. So those were the 4 charges they actually filed on him.
On Orange Sox?
Yes, those were the actual charges, were aggravated rape, kidnapping, robbery, and murder.
Why did they say, what did he rob her of?
God knows. Her clothes?
Her clothes. Okay. Yeah, all right. He stole her clothes. And then the aggravated rape from Henry, who was impotent.
Yes.
And there's no evidence of sexual trauma. The only evidence of rape, with no corroborating evidence,
Yes.
was what Henry said. So now Boutwell comes back on the tape of the interview. He comes back and he's still concerned about the time of the year. Well, you've been pretty accurate, except for the time of the year. Accurate about what?
Yeah, I've heard nothing but inaccuracies.
I've heard nothing at all. Except
Heard nothing at all.
Guesses, and everyone's, well, oh, yeah, that guess is right. Okay, I'll write that one down. So you've been pretty accurate on that, except for the time of year. In other words, Henry, damn it, you haven't guessed the time of year right. Now, come on, think how many, if it's not early and it's not middle, what is it?
Right.
You know? So Lucas says, like I said, it could be on in a different part of the year, and I've got her mixed up with another one. But as far as that body, that is the one that I killed, and there ain't no doubt about it.
Boom.
So
Fix the problem.
Ain't no doubt about it.
Fix the problem.
Yeah. So it could have been a different time of the year.
Which is what we see in a lot of the other confession stuff too, right? Where he'll just say he'll pretend like he's confusing it with other ones, and that's his go-to. You know how to make it fit is, I'm just confusing it right now. My bad, but yep, that's definitely the one.
There have been probably one, maybe the same day, either the same day or the same night, where they could have come up missing around that same area. So he's saying, ain't my fault I'm confused. There was probably a bunch of them in that same area.
Oh, boy.
So Boutwell showed him a picture of the ring on the victim that Orange Sox was wearing. And we've all seen pictures of that. Lucas says he did not remember the ring. So then they talked about how many different ways Lucas killed victims. And then he got him to sign a written confession.
And that was it.
That was it.
Rest is history.
Then Boutwell got back to Georgetown. And he listens to the confession and decides to return to Montague.
Because the first one just wasn't enough. Didn't get close enough.
It was like a slice of Swiss cheese. It had holes all in it. I mean, he still hadn't cleaned up the stab wounds and stuff yet.
Yeah, that's a big one.
He still doesn't really have a accurate time of year. The only reason he has the accurate location is because he told him.
He gave it to him.
I mean, it's just right there. Well, right, it was right there in Georgetown, 30 miles to the north of Austin. Yeah. No, all the time it'd been San Antonio. Well, I just got so many, I get confused. Okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's go on. So, Boutwell reads Lucas's rights. That's good. Get that on tape.
Yeah.
Then he shows him a picture of the victim right off the bat.
Ooh.
Here's your Miranda warnings, and here's a picture of the victim.
Here's a
Sheriff
little
Boutwell, did you show Henry Lucas pictures of any of the victims and pictures of the crime scene? I did not. Anybody that says that, that's a damn lie. Okay? Well, here it
Love
is.
the way you do that.
Here it is. He showed a picture of the victim. And Luke says, yes, sir, I recognize her. Boutwell, okay, and can you tell me again where you first saw her? Now, he reads the Miranda, the tape recorder, his own, all that. But, you know, what about Boutwell say before the tape recorder came on?
Right.
You know. And I hate to be that way, but when you look at this case as a whole and look at all the other cases, like the Carolyn Cervinka case that we've talked about and we'll talk about again, which no way. I mean,
no way.
All the evidence shows that Boutwell had to have told him the details.
And this is
especially
where the girl
Carolyn
drove off the road, right, and died in her car. It was totally an accident, but he said he killed her. Mm-hmm. And they like took the necklace or something as a charm, but really like the river went down and they found her body and it was an accident.
That's
right.
The one? She had an epileptic seizure, went off the road into a creek and drowned. And then the next year during the drought, they found her, and she's still wearing the necklace that Henry said he had taken off of her. Now, you know how Boutwell answered that?
How's that?
Henry was a little psychic, you know.
Oh, is that right?
I swear.
It's paranormal, Vic.
Henry was a little psychic. He had the vision.
Oh, jeez.
So can you tell me again where you first saw her? Boutwell asked. Well, let me see now. I'm blank. I got so many on my mind. I believe she is the one I picked up hitchhiking. Boutwell, okay, that's what you told me before. I know you've talked to an awful lot of people and a lot of officers since then. Okay, remember I was talking about that before. Mm-hmm. Here he is, kept there in that jail under suicide watch, clothes kept away from him most of the time, wrapped in a blanket, not showering, nothing like that, and a parade of law enforcement officers coming in and questioning him. Boutwell says, I know you've talked to an awful lot of people and a lot of officers since then. Now I'm going to give you a minute to see if you can remember where you picked her up hitchhiking. And then Lucas goes, well, it was on 35, I'm pretty sure on 35. In what state? Texas. Boutwell, no, that's not what you told me before. Oh, I'm thinking so doggone many states. Yeah, there are 50 of them, right? Well, you told me before it was Oklahoma City. So here he is feeding him back the stuff that he can't remember.
Right.
Oklahoma City. Yeah, that's right. This is Henry. Yeah, that's right. Well, so are you sure you're right? Henry, right. Yeah, I'm right. So that's just classic, you know. You see that in all of his confessions where he has to guess and guess. Yeah, that's it, Henry. That's the one, Henry.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a confession. It's just a guessing game.
It is a guessing game.
Boutwell asking, well, what happened when you picked her up? Well, I picked her up and had sex with her. Did she volunteer? Yeah, she volunteered, and, well, the next time after that, why I killed her for sex, I just don't know. I just ain't satisfied with live sex. So, Boutwell, well, do you remember where you killed her? Yeah, it was on, let me see. I can't think of it right now.
But it's a process to where it's this back and forth. Give a little, okay, I'll take that. Give a little, I'll take that. And they're just slowly churning the story to where it fits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would recommend the documentary When They See Us. Yeah, it's a Netflix. It's 4 or 5 parts. I cried, man. I cried when I saw that because it will take this situation that we're talking about and it shows you how it works.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how those young men were framed. Absolutely framed with absolutely zero zip, nothing for evidence.
Yeah.
The same way that these Henry Lucas confessions were taken. Only Henry was a voluntary participant. Those young men were beaten. They were intimidated. They were locked up without food. Now, Henry volunteered after he had been locked up and mistreated, you know, after he had tried to commit suicide twice. Then he just started confessing to everything. So anyway, back to Lucas. He says, I remember it was on 35, this side of Austin. No, the other side of Austin, west of Austin. He's still getting his locations wrong. Boutwell. No, you said it right the first time, this side of Austin. Now, is that feeding?
It sounds like feeding.
Yeah.
Guess wrong.
It's West Austin. No, you said it right the first time. So, shame on you. Then they talk about how you got her into the culvert.
Did you carry all by yourself?
Yeah, I drug her over the guardrail. Drug her over there.
一人でやりました。
誰も手伝わずに。
Nobody helped.
No.
誰も手伝わず。It is that body is really heavy, but did you actually lift it?
No, I didn't lift it. I drug it.
Come on, what is Boutwell thinking right now?
He's thinking he's got to make this thing fit.
But
That's what he's
why?
thinking.
I mean, hadn't he figured out right now that this guy probably didn't do it?
I would have to say you are correct. Vic.
He's given him every
no way.
fact.
Yeah, and he still can't get it.
There's not an independent fact that's come out of Henry Lucas's mouth that hadn't been fed to him by Boutwell or shown to him in a picture by Boutwell.
Right.
Yet, when we started this group of episodes, you read the written signed confession, and it flows, man. It's not all this back and forth. It's this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. Bang.
Right.
Not all this, well, I don't know. I'm guessing wrong. Still, he's confessing inconsistent with the physical evidence.
Yes.
I'm not going to say confessing. He's guessing inconsistent with the physical evidence. So, Boutwell by then was concerned about the shape of the sanitary napkin and getting Lucas to fit. So he goes back to another subject for a little while. I don't know if he ever really clears that up, but yet they use it as corroborative evidence. I think he just goes with the fact that she's on her period, and they use that as corroborative evidence, although Henry never, I don't think he ever, if he gets around to describing what it's like, I don't recall.
Okay.
We'll get to it if it is. See, and Boutwell also knew that this victim, Deborah Jackson, had suffered from full-blown venereal disease.
Oh, wow.
We discussed that earlier, too. Henry talking about all this sex he had. A lot of them had venereal disease, but Henry didn't, which I think corroborates the fact that he was impotent, along with his medical records, which say he was impotent but from that stabbing wound that he got in prison. So the odds are that, Henry would have had some type of VD. So Boutwell asked him, okay, have you ever had a venereal disease from one of these women? Lucas, not that I can remember. Well, somehow that just kind of falls off the plate and never gets visited again.
Wow.
So what's Boutwell thinking now? Does he really think he's got the right killer?
Well,
I'm wondering. I mean, what the hell's going on here?
Well, it's a 4-year-old crime. This is 2 trips worth of effort into it. Yeah, you have to wonder.
So just pin it on this old one-eyed drifter, whether he did it or not.
Yeah.
He's willing to say whatever I want him to say, so we'll just pin it on him. And, hey, let's get the death penalty on him.
Yeah.
And Henry told me that Boutwell promised him that if he confessed to this, that they would never seek the death penalty on him.
Oh, wow.
And then they did.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we got to find that clip and put it up on our website so people can see it.
Of him getting loaded in the car?
Yes.
Yes, we got to find that.
Yeah, where he says, I didn't do the crime.
Yeah.
I'm committing suicide because I didn't do the crime. And he's just smiling.
And that's what's so notable about this case and why we're doing this episode, partly because, this new evidence has come to light as to who she is, that we finally have a name for her, Deborah Jackson. But also because this is the only case that Henry got the death penalty on. This is the only one. Mm-hmm. And this is the one that his sentence got brought down to being life in prison by George W. Bush.
George Bush.
Governor at the time. The only one he did that for was Henry.
Henry. The only one he saved was Henry. George Bush. He saved Henry Lee Lucas and killed Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, there you go. Stunning.
Stunning.
So that's why this case is so crucial to note, because the evidence was so flawed, and yet this is the one he got the death penalty on.
I know.
It's like, whoa.
So flawed. And that judge now is a congressman. Yeah,
Indeed.
But he was just calling balls and strikes. I'm not saying anything bad about him. He was just calling balls and strikes, and he didn't know what was going on in the back room.
Right. Yeah, he had bigger fish to fry.
He might have been the judge over the Michael Morton case. I'm not sure. We'll have to look that up, because that was in Williamson County. Mm-hmm. And remember, that prosecutor, he was Ed Walsh's assistant. He ended up losing the bench. He was a judge by the time Michael Morton's case was reversed. But they withheld evidence. That man did decades in prison for a crime he didn't commit.
Wow.
And because they hid evidence and lied, just because it's standard procedure, the same kind of stuff they pulled on Henry, they pulled on Michael Morton. And then that judge, he was removed from the bench and then later disbarred.
Wow, man.
Yeah, State Bar of Texas disbarred him. They thought what he had done was that dishonest. Well, this is also that dishonest. Boutwell tells Lucas he wants him to think about the case overnight, and they'll drive down to Georgetown the next day, and maybe you can point something out. So think about this tonight, and we'll talk about it some more while it's just me and you in the car, Henry. And I'm operating my little handheld recorder. So Boutwell then changes subject. He goes back to the quote-unquote Kotex. Now, you told me before that you thought she had a Kotex or something on. I think this is where he finally straightens it out. Mm-hmm. And Lucas goes, yeah. And you didn't tell me it was one of them Tampax. Well, that is what he told him.
That's exactly what he told him.
Yeah. And now he's saying, you didn't tell me. You didn't tell me that was one of them Tampax. Lucas, well, I didn't tell you that, but that's what it was.
Okay, so he has reaffirmed it. All right. No question there.
I'm pretty sure. I might be wrong, but either a Tampax or a Kotex or whatever they call it, that's what I call them. I know she had one on, what I call, and then he just some more. But that's what I call Kotex, though. So Boutwell's still trying to straighten that out.
Yep, so here we are. This is interview 2. Still not accurate.
And what's so important here is that this is one of the 2 items of corroboration. There were only 2.
Yeah,
only
that's
2.
Matchbook?
This so-called homemade Kotex thing and the matchbook.
Oh, boy.
So then Boutwell comes back. Kotex, is more of a flat thing. Kinda. Tampax looks like a little white cigar.
Fair.
Lucas, I don't know anything about them. I never got none for no woman, so I don't know. So most everything Boutwell has suggested, Lucas hadn't picked up the hint yet.
Right.
And he's pretty good at picking up hints, but he's just not following here. So Lucas says it was a little flatter than a cigar. Well, that's still not a handkerchief.
Yeah, still cigarette.
Yeah, a little flatter than a cigar. And then so Boutwell, he seems willing to accept that, but he keeps kind of fishing around with it. And he said, I don't think it looked like a cigar, but it might have been. And he's even leading him on the time of the day. Well, Boutwell, if it was still daylight, wouldn't it have been awful risky? Wouldn't it have been awful risky to stop the car and drag a naked girl out of the car? There's a lot of traffic on those highways. So that's just Boutwell saying, Henry, you couldn't have dumped her during the day.
Right.
Yeah. So the next day, Sheriff Boutwell puts Lucas in his car and they start driving to Georgetown. And then at about 1 p.m., 10 miles south of Waco, and that's more than 150 miles from Montague, the tape recorder comes on.
Oh.
Yeah. And I asked Boutwell, I said, what were you doing? What were y'all talking about during that 150 miles? Oh, just small talk. I didn't ask him anything. I didn't tell him anything until the recorder came on. That was a small talk.
Because you brought him in for your grand jury, right?
Yes.
And that's when you got to ask about all these fun things.
Yeah. And then Brad Shelday asked him about that too, when Brad was doing interviews for me for the book we were working on. So, yeah, so then the tape recorder comes on. And Lucas tells the sheriff how many women he's raped and killed, and he's talking about that kind of stuff. And again, about how much he likes dead sex. And about he tells again about killing his school teacher when he was 13. Here again, unfactual. He tells he killed his mother, but for sex.
Wait, what?
Yeah, right.
Which is not accurate
Not
at all.
accurate at all. Not true at all. She was not sexually molested. She actually died of a heart attack.
Right.
Yeah. We talked about that. Yeah. So, I killed my own mama for sex. How far out there do you have to go before Sheriff Boutwell starts getting suspicious?
You got to ask that question.
How about when Henry claimed he had killed people in Japan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or driven the poison to Jim Jones.
Or Jimmy Hoffa.
Did he claim Jimmy Hoffa?
He did.
Oh, man, I didn't know that.
And the Lindbergh baby.
Oh, I don't think he claimed that one. He wasn't born yet.
Oh, my God.
Then Boutwell goes, all right, well, we're passing through this little town of Salado now. Salado, south of Waco. Mm-hmm. And now we get further down the road. I want you to keep an eye open and see if you can spot that overpass where you dropped the girl out. And if you do, let me know. Well, keep in mind, he's already seen the photographs of the culvert. I mean, that was the first thing Boutwell showed him, was a photograph of the culvert,
Right.
Well, no, the photograph of the victim was the first thing, and then the culvert after that. There's no video here. I mean, how do we know Boutwell by this time isn't pointing at stuff or slowing down? Mm-hmm. I remember I asked Henry, how did you locate Becky's body, or the body they claim was Becky? I still don't think it was Becky. How'd you look? He said, well, they pulled up and they started driving really, really slow. And I saw some survey stakes in the middle of the field with ribbons flapping on the top. And I said, this looks like it might be the
X
place.
marks the spot.
And I get up out of the car and I walk to the survey stake and they go, well, I'll be. That's right, Henry. Yeah. Or he'd say that we'd drive by this one house back and forth, back and forth. He said, finally, by elimination, I'd figure out that's the house.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, drive down 2 blocks and then come back. Then we'd just drive a block and then come back. He said, I wanted to see one time if they'd just go in a circle around the house. Oh, my God. He never pushed them that far, though, but he thought about it. And then we're getting close now, Boutwell warns again. Keep your eyes open. And Lucas, I've been watching. And Boutwell, closer now. Any of this territory look familiar to you? And, and this...
Yes, I mean, he's
the excitement is
guiding
getting
him in. Yeah.
Yeah, it's familiar. I've been through this part of the territory. And he rambles a little. And then right in the middle of a sentence, he says, he's going on, he says, clear on the other side of Dallas, just outside of Oklahoma's a ways. And then suddenly he stopped and says, right there, there it is. And pointed at the culvert he had already seen the picture of. And no telling what was going on in the car. Right. And I hate to say that, but I think that's a reasonable conclusion based on everything else we've seen.
Yeah.
The way this confession has gone.
Yeah.
He would have been pointed out. He gave him everything else. Why not do a little finger point?
Yep. I tend to agree with you.
Yeah. So, Boutwell, okay, you just pointed it out. That's exactly where she was found. It's 1:52 p.m.
And we're off the record.
Yep, we're off the record. Turn it off before you can say anything to mess it up, Henry. So Boutwell then takes the tape recorder and proudly announces, we just passed the exact location where the unidentified girl's body was found, and Henry did point the location out exactly. Said that's where it was.
Ha!
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's it. And the next day, August 2nd, Boutwell, Lucas, and his court-appointed lawyer, Don Higginbotham of Georgetown, stand out by the side of the road by the culvert, videotaping yet another confession. And Higginbotham can be heard in the background objecting and saying he didn't want Lucas to confess, but Lucas just kept talking.
Well, I got to get it out of the way.
I want it off my chest.
So, here we go. I mean, this, from what we've said so far, I mean, every piece has been manufactured and fed to him. I mean, there's nothing that he came up with naturally on his own.
Nothing, including the two legally required pieces of corroboration. A confession has to have corroboration.
Right.
That homemade sanitary napkin, no corroboration at all.
None.
Henry just guessed all over the place and never came up with the right description.
Yep.
Had to be shown pictures of the location. Never cleaned it up about the stabbing. Somehow that just didn't make it into the typewritten version.
Yeah.
And then the strangling he came up with after Boutwell showed him the pictures.
Yes.
So, I mean, and the matchbooks. You know, that is not corroboration when you see it in the picture. So that's basically Henry's confession, annotated.
And again, he was interviewed 3 times before it got to some final level, and even the final level wasn't.
Yeah, even that
totally
wasn't
accurate.
finished. 3 times plus out there with Higginbotham, and then plus interviewed again to knock the legs out from under his defense witnesses about the documentation in Jacksonville, Florida.
Right, the check in his work records.
Exactly. So, man, Henry was interviewed a lot. And this case still was full of holes. Thank you for listening to the Vic Feazell Show podcast. And visit us at www.vicfeazell.com for more information. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Drive laid back and lower your speed, 1877 with Vic.